Do I just need to call the meeting to order? Is that okay? I'd just like to welcome everybody here. I'm Lynn Moody, and I have the honor and the privilege of being the superintendent in Rowan-Salisbury School District. And very proud of our district and the work we're doing there, and I'm sure all of you are proud of where you're at. And so I think we're just going to call this meeting to order this morning and welcome all of our new people. And if it's okay, Dr. Fair, can we just go around the room and make some brief introductions? Is that?
Sure, and once we're finished around the room, we'll remind those online.
Okay, okay. So I'm going to start with my right hand, Katie Linkner, and I'll ask Commissioner Linker if she'll tell you where she's from and her role. She actually does all the work, and I take all the credit.
Thank you, Dr. Mooney, but that is not true. Commissioner Linker, Katie, not Kathleen. I'm from Rowan-Salisbury Schools. This is my, I forgot how long, 21st year maybe on the commission, fourth the governor. And so this is my first term as co-chair. Welcome all the new commissioners. Nice to see all the returning people.
Christopher, we'll just move to you if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Sure. My name is Christopher Madden. I'm from Pender County Schools. I'm the principal at Topsail High School currently. I've been with Pender County Schools in school administration for the last 10 years and served as a principal at 4 different schools.
Wow.
Last 3 years was at Pender High, so now I'm at Topsail, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
We're pushing anything? No, speaking. Okay. Hello, my name is Dawn Hester. This is my 5th year on the textbook commission, and I am from Pitt County Schools, and I am the special programs coordinator and an administrator of an alternative school. So, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Susan Mills. This is my 2nd year on the commission. I teach family and consumer science, better known as home ec. And I teach at Midway High School in Sampson County, but I actually live in Cumberland County.
Good morning. I am Michelle Perry. This is my first day, and I'm very excited. I am from Sampson County. I teach at Midway High School. I teach business and marketing and education, and I'm also a parent of a 6th grader. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is William Cheshire. I'm a retired Army veteran, 26 years. From Cumberland County, father of 3, 1 6th grade, 4th and 3rd. It's my first day on the committee. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Laura Austin, and this is my 2nd year on the commission. I represent the Northwest, and I am principal in Burke County at East Burke Middle School.
All right. Good morning. My name is Hannah Jimenez. I'm the digital learning specialist at Rochelle Middle School in Lenoir County, and this is my first day.
My name is Lindsay Seiss. I am currently the Sand Hills Regional Teacher of the Year. I come from Hope County. I am a 7th grade science teacher, and today is my first day.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Browning. I'm from Cabarrus County. I teach 8th grade science there. I'm starting my 2nd year on the textbook commission.
My name is Lisa Springle. I'm from Wake County. I'm an academic dean and teacher, English teacher at Raleigh Charter High School. And you know from the sign, it's my first day.
My name is Tony Coggins, and it's my first day as well. I'm from Wayne County, and I teach high school English at Charles B. Aycock High School.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacy Wood. I'm from Harnett County. I'm the Exceptional Children's Instructional Specialist for Harnett County Schools. I was a former EC teacher for about 16 years. I'm also a parent. I have twin 15-year-olds and an 11-year-old.
Good. Dr. Fair, I'm going to ask the people who are online to introduce themselves, if you could.
Okay, so we need, for those of you who are joining us online, to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Dr. Fair? We can't really hear.
Good morning, this is Michelle Gray, serving as Sand Hills Region Textbook Commissioner. Currently serving as math specialist and beginning teacher program coordinator in Moore County Schools. And good morning, I am Jody Autry. I am currently serving as an instructional coach in Union County Public Schools, but I also hold the title of an interim principal currently.
Aubrey is Ed, sixth grade science student, my second year with the commission. That's when I served the Southeast region.
Hi, I'm Commissioner Morrison. I'm in Cedar County. I'm a principal at West Bender Middle School, home of the Warriors. I cannot remember how long I've served, but it's been an honor to serve. I can't wait to meet everybody.
That's it.
Okay, is there anyone else?
Okay, thank you all for taking a minute. It's just kind of good to know where everybody's from and the roles that you're serving in your prospective areas. Dr. Fair, would that count as the roll call, or do we need to do a roll call?
I'm not sure if everybody who was online responded.
Okay.
I can see their names.
Okay.
So we can let that officially be our roll call.
Okay, all right, great. We'll let that officially be our roll call. I just, again, just say welcome to everybody. I know this is a commitment of your time and your energy. I hope that you will find this meaningful and important work, that you've been commissioned to do this job for a reason, and your perspectives from all over are really important to the work that we're trying to do as we move forward. Some people have been serving a long time, and thank you all for the year after year commitment that you've done it. And for the new people, I was new last year, and I was really nervous when I was sitting in that seat, like, what am I doing here, and what's going to happen, and what did I agree to do and to sign on for? So I'll just remind the veteran folks to be friendly to our new people so that you'll come back again and stay with us for some period of time. So it's really nice to have a full board, Dr. Fair, so we're really pleased. We were struggling with how many members we had last year, so we're really pleased and hope that you find this is very rewarding. We need to approve our minutes, is that correct, from our last meeting? So I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review those, but I'd entertain a motion for that.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Wood, I'll second.
Commissioner Linkner made a motion. Commissioner Wood second. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we think that's passed. I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Commissioner Linkner, now.
Good morning. On the agenda, we're going to take a few minutes just to kind of talk about our virtual meeting best practices as we offer that option for all of our meetings. And after we had the last one that was at my house, for those of you that are new, the dog chose to bark in the middle. And as I was talking, I couldn't mute myself, so it was interesting. But we did have some technical difficulties at the beginning of that meeting, making sure everyone was online that needed to speak. So there's some things we just wanted to touch base on. You did have in the folder, I think it was your the fifth number. It said number 5, North Carolina Textbook Commission Virtual Meeting Best Practices. Dr. Fair and I just kind of brainstormed some things. If anything that you want to add in your experiences as doing virtual meetings that maybe we left off. First of all, we should think about beforehand planning to make sure that your technology is going to work. And if your computer doesn't work for some reason, you can always opt to do the call-in method if the GoToMeeting doesn't work. You need to sign in at least 15 minutes before the meeting starts. So like this morning's meeting started at 10. If people started logging in at 9:45, that gives a chance to see if the mic works, if you don't have the right rights. Because we are a public meeting, it is open to the public, which means in some cases anyone can pop in and they're just listening. They can't participate. They're not participants. So they don't have the rights to speak or add comments. So as board members, we would need to come in a webinar as a participant in order to be able to talk. And that's something that happens up front before. It's a separate login than what the general public would have that wouldn't have the rights. And so it's always good to give it, 10 minutes to make sure everything works, you're on and you're ready to go on your end before we actually start. If for some reason you are at a off-site joining us virtually and you are having issue, if you are on the program, if you can get successfully into the GoWebinar, you can private message Dr. Fair, because she's always got that up and she's looking to see, if anyone's commenting. And you can also email her, and that's another reason why we say 15 minutes before, because once we get ready to start, she's manning the board. And it's really hard for her to toggle from that to check the email. I was guilty last time we did the virtual meeting. I had some commissioners that were having problems, and so they were letting me know that they were having problems because they were already in it. And I was in the meeting at hindsight as I went back and listened to it, verbally saying so-and-so's on, but we can't hear. And for myself, I know that I need to make sure that I'm putting a private message in so that everyone can see that that's what's occurring, but maybe that's not something that needs to be said. So just some pointers on that end. But once we got up and going, it was okay. If you are joining virtually, you might want to make sure that you're mute unless you're talking. Again, in my funny story, when the dog decided to bark because I was at home, and I was talking, so I couldn't really mute the background noise. So I know for myself, I shall have to go to another part of the house if I ever do it from home, where the dog cannot be near me, and stop. Things like that to keep in mind. I know a lot of people join in from work. We have a lot of Zoom meetings in my county, and so if we're in a Zoom meeting, I know my principal has a sign and she'll put on her door that says in a Zoom meeting, and everyone knows that means that not to come in because she's in the middle of a meeting. So things like that to keep in mind when you're doing a virtual meeting. You also you should make sure also that you have a strong internet signal wherever you are, and that it's a stable connection. And if it were to ever go out, because things like that do happen, imagine that. You can try to log back in or do the call-up number. I usually try to have the go-to meeting open in the background so I can quickly get to where the other options are. Sometimes you do have to shut down the computer, and then there'll be some lag time to come back on. So just when you get back up, then Dr. Fair can see that you're back online. I think when we do a virtual meeting, part of the quorum, it is to take the place of a face-to-face meeting. So other than the initial roll call, which is verification that we have quorum and that who is present, you should be making comments during the meeting at some point, so that for the record you're participating. While you are participating at home, it's hard for the public record to show that you're participating if you're not making a comment. So just occasionally, weigh in and make a comment so that for the record you are actively participating. Speak loudly and clearly because it is recorded, so that it is a clear recording. And the last thing, which as professionals we all do, is, to the best, you should give the meeting your full attention during the meeting so that you know what's going on. You don't know when you need to come in and say something, or you have a point that you'd like to share. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Does anybody have any other best practices from your experiences as in a virtual meeting that you'd like to share before we move?
Is there anything you think that needs to be added moving forward for the future?
Yeah. Okay. So that's just some things to keep in mind for the virtual meeting practices. For the next part of the meeting, we are a little ahead. Dr. Fair is going to look at the operations manual policy, so if you guys want to get that ready, it was number 2 in our folder.
Everybody the opportunity to find. I'm going to just step up here, not to be formal, but just so you can hear me through the mic. Does everybody have theirs? Okay. I'm thinking I'm taller than I am. All right, so what I want to do is I kind of want to go through this with you. I'm sure that with everything else that you all had to prepare for the meeting, you didn't really have time to sit down and absorb all of this and be able to process it at the same time. So I want to point out some things that are extremely important. And if you noticed on the agenda, one of the items this afternoon is the ethics training. So State Board Legal Counsel will come in and join us this afternoon at 1 o'clock, right after our lunch, to do the ethics training. And I wanted to mention that because you may find that he may cover some things that I'm covering this morning. I'm going to try not to go into a lot of detail for everything because you really do need to go back and take a look at this. This is kind of like your governing document. It not only has meeting rules and things like that, but it also has, as you'll see, our state board policies as well as our general statutes that guide the work of you all as the commission. So this will be good reading for you at any time. So let's go ahead and look at the rules of procedure. These are rules that basically should govern your work as well as your meetings. You can see here it talks about the fact that we use Robert's Rules of Order. We have to have a quorum in order to meet. Commissioner Moody alluded to the fact that we had some issues last year, always being able to establish a quorum. We somehow always made it, but we did have to stop our work for a while so that we could get more members on our commission. The quorum, the magic quorum number is 12. So we have to have 12 people in order to meet. All of your meetings are public meetings, and in order to be able to even meet if we're doing it virtually, if at any point you're going to meet and discuss textbook commission business, we have to have 12 members together or meeting together in order to make that happen. So we also here talk about officers. If you would have been here last year, for those of you that are new, we had mainly almost all of our commission was comprised of new members. So we did have to select our officers, our chair and our co-chair. And as you know, Dr. Moody has introduced herself as the chair and Commissioner Linker as the co-chair. I am the DPI liaison for the Textbook Commission. And I should have introduced myself before I started, but I think you're all familiar with my name from my emails. But my role is primarily to work with you all as the Textbook Commission to support you for your meetings, evaluation week, deliberations, and things like that. If you have questions, issues, or concerns, you may also see emails coming from me. If I get a request for public records sometimes, those will funnel through to me, and then I may be reaching out to you, or our communications director may be reaching out to you. Sometimes individuals are allowed to reach out to you as well. I think some of you experienced maybe receiving an email from someone asking a question about the Textbook Commission. So do know we are public servants. Our meetings are public, so you may have to respond to emails, or you may have to, be contacted in some way by someone about anything dealing with the Textbook Commission. Sometimes the request may even go way back. So if it's back before your time, then of course you would just let whoever it is that's contacting you know that you were not on the commission at that time. But at any rate, just don't be surprised if any of that comes up. Just want you to know that. And sometimes some of the commissioners have reached out to me to say, I received this email and I want to know. And then if you want me to verify, then I can do that as well. The other rules here, we have rules on voting, also about the meetings, which I've just talked about a little bit. We do keep minutes. Today we have, this is my co-worker, her name is Tika Clavel, and Tika is in Digital Teaching and Learning Division along with me, and she is helping me out today. Sometimes I'll have to take the minutes, so that is why I say if you're joining virtually, please go on as a panelist so you can kind of manage yourself, because sometimes it is difficult to even go into the chat pane and see if you're typing me a note or to go into my email if I'm doing all of the roles. So just be cognizant of that. As much as we can, we'll have someone here to take minutes, but if not, that's me. So I'll have to, do what I can do in terms of the go-to as I can get to it. You have your agenda. Typically, the agenda comes from your leadership, Dr. Moody or Commissioner Linker, or the two of them together. They collaborate with me on what the agenda is. We pretty much have topics for our meeting set in terms of the broad umbrella of what they are. Like our February meeting, we know we normally do ethics training, introductions, and things like that. And then when we come together for our next meeting, that's typically like our content meeting. So things like that. We have certain things that we do at certain meetings, but there is flexibility for that to change, as well as for there to be call meetings. So even though we have set meetings in the schedule that you've seen in our draft invitation, if Dr. Moody or Commissioner Linker feel like there's another meeting needed, it may be something before we do evaluations or before we do deliberations, then she can call that meeting, but we would just have to have a quorum. So when you see those emails from me saying, please respond in this forum to let me know, that is why, because we're definitely trying to see if we have quorum for the meeting. Subcommittees, we've not done a whole lot with subcommittees. Sometimes maybe if there's a need, but do read that because there may be an opportunity to participate with a subcommittee. Legal counsel is going to go over the standards of conduct. These are the things that pretty much impact you as an individual and being a part of the commission and meeting, dealing with conflicts of interest and things like that. So he'll go over that in much more detail and give you the legal side of that. I'm at Rule 10. There is a rule about attendance. I'm not sure if we've ever really discussed that in length or in detail, but the information about the attendance rule is here. The main thing is that you're expected to attend 75% of all the regularly scheduled meetings, according to this document. So please keep that in mind. And we do know that things come up, there are emergencies, and sometimes things are beyond your control. We've had a couple of commissioners who couldn't be here physically this morning because of either not feeling well or things coming up, and we know we're all human and that's going to happen. So what I would say is if you can, as much as possible, let Commissioner Linker know, let me know, and that way we'll be able to at least know already that you're not going to be here, especially if we were expecting you to come. It'll just be helpful to let us know as much as in advance as you can that you may not be coming. There's other stuff here that you can read on for that. We also have the Rule 11 about the public participation in the public meetings, the committee meetings, and then we have Rule 12, which is amendments and suspensions of rules. So I would definitely recommend that when you all have the opportunity, you go back, you look at these rules. If you do have any questions, let me know, and if I can't answer it, I'll make sure that we have an answer from the appropriate people, okay? Anything just on those rules, just seeing those maybe for the first time or just kind of skimming over. Anybody have any questions on those? We're good? All right. The next things I'm going to kind of go through quickly. We do have a copy of something that's in the invitation called the Responsibilities of Publishers for Bid Submissions. This gives you the information in our guidelines that we provide to publishers, which is in our invitation, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Basically, our publishers who decide to submit for the process are responsible for determining their grade levels and courses for their materials. We do not make those decisions. Even when we get bid documents and all of that, that has to be already included on the bid document. So we don't as a commission, or you don't as a commission, and I don't as a DPI staff person, make the decision about what grade level this content goes under. If it's something where it can't be determined, we would have to maybe reach out for clarification if necessary. But we have a whole process with our procurement office and our legal team that we get additional information when we need it. So you'll find out a little bit more about some of the processes that are not a part of your work, that are part of helping your work to happen. You may find out about some of those as we move further into other things, you know, dealing with the platform, dealing with having advisors and things like that. Also, we ask publishers to label their samples. I know that that has been something, and Commissioner Linker is looking at me because that's been something we always try to address. It is very difficult for us and for you all, when you're doing the evaluations and for the teachers, if materials are not labeled appropriately. So we do have several times in our guiding document for our publishers that they need to be sure to label all of their samples. And if they have electronic submissions or digital submissions, we do ask them to include or to send a list of what those are with appropriate access information for support and all of those things. So when you get your materials, you may get some of those things as far as list, but you should definitely get labeled on, everything should be labeled. It should have our ID number on it that they're given, things like that. So that information will also be in our invitation. Publishers are also asked to furnish correlations. The correlations are those documents where they show how their materials correlate with our North Carolina state standards. That's important for you to have because you'll be looking at the materials on your own. The teachers will come in and they will have the opportunity also to look at the correlations and look at the materials, but they'll really be digging into those materials looking for those standards themselves. They will not just take it for face value. They'll see what the document says, but then they'll also look. And then they provide that information in their evaluation. So we'll have that checked. But this is what we do ask of the publisher. So if you find that there are things that aren't labeled, you definitely have to let Commissioner Moody or Commissioner Linker know so that we can make sure that we handle that or get that addressed. We also have information about contact with publishers. You as commissioners, once we begin our evaluation process, we actually have two what we call blackout periods during the process. You all are not able to meet privately with publishers after we start the process. Once the invitation is sent out, you're not able to meet privately with publishers. You cannot do any one-on-one meetings, talking, phone calls, or anything like that. This is going to give you that information, so you would need to make sure that you go through this and read it so that you're aware of what that is. We also have and I think yours lasts until the list of recommended materials are adopted by the state board. We also have a sampling promotion blackout, and that particular one is from the time that the invitation goes out until the day after evaluation sessions. And that prevents publishers from going out and presenting materials that they have submitted. They still can go out and present other materials that they have, but materials that they've submitted for our adoption process, they're not able to go out and sample and promote those materials once this period starts. So we do have that period as well. This is, page 8 is on the use of textbook samples. So this just pretty much tells you about what you can and cannot do with those samples that you receive. So I would definitely say read this and be aware of that because you will be receiving samples of all the materials that will be submitted for our adoption process. Page 9 is about recommendations to the state board. You all as a commission, you're going to do evaluations, you'll do written reports, and then you will make sure that you have whatever recommendations you want the board to consider. That'll all be put together in a document for us to send to the board. So I'm your liaison for the state board. I'll have those materials. I work with the team that manages our platform, the TOPS team at NC State. We'll get those reports together. We'll get the recommendations together. All those materials will go to the board, and you'll have access to those materials as well. But you are responsible for a report, and then your information is turned into a recommendation list once you do your deliberations meeting. So you'll have access to that as well. This talks about having, at the conclusion of your meeting, having titles that are not recommended. You know, at the deliberations meeting, we do have an opportunity for reconsideration. So you would deliberate, and it's an open meeting. Publishers are invited to come. They have to be present if they would like to be reconsidered, if they have something that is not recommended. So I would definitely say please read that, because if we do a reconsideration period, then you would need to listen to what they would have to say to you about whatever their resource is, and then make a decision a second time about whether or not you would recommend those materials. So that'll be an important part of the process. So I'm going to pause just a minute. I've gotten through all of that piece. I'll pause a minute, see if anybody has any questions, or if anyone from the commission would like to add, those of you that have experienced this before. Everybody's good? That means what I said is true.
It just sounds a lot harder than it really is. When you start to go through it, it'll all make sense. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Dr. Moody. I'm trying not to make it sound hard, but it's really hard with rules and statutes.
There are a lot of rules, and so if you just get confused, just ask somebody, why do we have that rule and
Yeah, so
what
what
does
am I
that mean?
doing, right? But yes, I think that you'll find that once you start going, especially even by the second meeting that we have here, things will make a little bit more sense. And as we begin to talk about bids and the teachers and the content and all of that, everything will start to make sense and come together. So, but
And
at
maybe
any
if you
time,
just think with the intent of all these rules are to protect you. Is this is a big deal. What you're getting ready to do is to make some decisions about what math textbooks will be adopted for the state. And so there's a lot of financial ramifications. There's a lot of curriculum ramifications. So it's important work. And you just don't want any bias to influence you in any way as you make your decisions. You were appointed on this commission because you bring a unique perspective as a parent or as a community member or as a teacher or as a principal. And we don't want anything to bias that work in any way. So if you think like that, everything makes it it's a lot simpler.
well said. Thank you. So if there are no questions on that front matter, then we do have general statutes and state board policies, which are aligned with those general statutes that kind of govern what we do. Some of the rules and the laws and the statutes are going to apply to what districts can do, but there are some that are specific to the textbook commission, your makeup and the work and all of that. So if you look on page 10, this is the start of our general statutes or our public school laws. The main one about commissioners is 115C 87. That's the one that basically addresses the fact that we have 23 members and what the roles of those members are. So some of you did have questions for me about roles. You're either in as a parent, a teacher, a principal, or a superintendent. So we have those roles in all of our grade levels in our K-5, our 6-8, and our 9-12. And then, of course, we have a superintendent, which and typically that role also covers our chair role for our commission. So Dr. Moody is filling our superintendent role, and then the rest of the roles are teachers and principals and parents. If you came in as a parent, just remember that if you have other experiences, if you are a teacher or you have taught or you have been a principal, of course you're going to use those experiences in the decisions that you make and the things that you do. So it's not that we're not recognizing that, it's just that we have certain roles that we have to fill as a commission, and so you're just listed in that role so that we know who we have in what role. In the event that we have people resign or whatever, then we can fill role specific. And that's for diversity, for experiences, and all of those types of things. There are also a few rules in here you'll see where it talks about evaluating the books, that the board will select the books and adopt them, and that we'll do contracts with publishers. And then also there's some things that deal with LEAs and what LEAs do and selling books and things like that. So I won't go through all of those for you, but they are very important because some of you may get questions because you're textbook commissioners. And some of the answers may be found in the general statutes, but when in doubt, just email me or call me, and I'll help you out if it comes to that. Let's move on to our state board policies, starting on page 16. You're going to find that these are aligned with the verbiage that's in the general statutes or the public school laws relative to the textbook commission. The first one on page 16, this again is this dealing with the standards of conduct. So this particular one is going to be one that the legal counsel will probably go over in a little more detail. But I would say to be sure to go back over this. This is, again, to protect you, to be sure that everything is aligned as it should be so that, you know, we don't have any issues down the road with anything. So it's just a matter of you taking a look at that and making sure that you understand. It's just how you will conduct yourself as a textbook commissioner. And we're fine, I'm sure. So just for your reading. The next policies, these are ones that govern about what textbook adoption would look like. So this gives you some specific ideas about what happens during our cycle and also about the evaluation and recommendations. We also have a policy about our textbook criteria and the invitation. That one is extremely important because if you noticed on the tentative schedule, we take the invitation to our State Board of Education for them to approve the invitation. Dr. Maria Petrie-Martin made the determination that we would have an adoption cycle, but then we take the invitation to the state board because that presents all our guidelines and rules and regulations for the process. They receive a training about it to be reminded of what the process and the cycle looks like, and then they decide to approve the invitation. And once they approve that, usually the next business day is when the invitation will go out to publishers. We have a NC Publishers Registry. That registry is one where publishers can voluntarily sign on, but they do not get the opportunity to receive the invitation or submit if they're not already on the publishers registry. So we do have that in place for publishers. The evaluation criteria, that comes from DPI content staff. So depending on what content area we are adopting, the appropriate staff, they go in, they revise either what they did previous times or they totally update it. ELA hasn't been adopted in a number of years. I think 2011 may have been the last time it was adopted, so it's been quite a while. So I think a lot of people are really excited to hear that that's what's in the hopper now, so that we'll get some newer resources for that content area. But our ELA consultants were the ones who came up with the criteria. The next one is on advisors. We'll talk more about advisors a little bit later on in the meeting, but you all select the advisors, and we do ask you to please think I think they go within their own area, their own state board district, and we ask that you try to come up with a diverse group of people reviewing, because they will be reviewing all of the resources that come in by their grade level, and we will make selections by grade level, and Commissioner Lincoln will explain that a little later on. Page 22 is about the Textbook Commission, which is again aligned with our general statute. Textbook contracts, this just basically talks about the fact that when we have the recommended list approved or adopted by the state board, we then go into a contract with those publishers, and all of that is handled by our office. So we have staff in the procurement office that work with us to contact publishers, get the contracts and some other documents to them. And then we have the disposition of old textbooks. I usually get some emails about this from LEAs, so this addresses what happens with those. 25 is on textbook publishers registry, so I've talked about that a little bit, so that'll give you that information that I just kind of summarized. And then last but not least, when we did the social studies adoption in 2016, this was relative to that because it's about the selection of American history textbooks. So we don't always talk about that one if we're not doing social studies. And that's it as far as your procedures, your operations manual. I just wanted to make sure you knew what was in there. Just as you have time, please go back and look over things to familiarize yourself. This and the invitation will give you all the information that you need to know about what you're doing as a commissioner. And then, as has been said already, you can always ask your fellow commissioners. You can always reach out to me if there are things that you're not sure about or that maybe you didn't read and you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing. But at any time, just let me know if you have any questions. Are there any questions now, though? We're good? Everybody's good? No, ma'am. They did away with those a number of years ago, way before I came on board, so we do not. And I think it had something to do with funding and things like that, and staff.
Well, I knew it's been a couple of years off, but I didn't know about something that would come back before things we got adopted.
No, as far as I've been told, it was something that the agency just decided to not do because of funding and staff to be able to do that. So I've not heard anything about that coming back. Any other questions? You're welcome. Any other questions? Well, we'll be here until 2, so
Dr. Fair, are you going to continue the slides for when we talk about the rest of it that you have? Or do you want me to just talk?
You can just talk.
Okay, because I know you had some slides that are...
Oh, those are for you if you need
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk about quite a few things. I'm trying to kind of keep it separated. We're going to talk about roles as commissioners and how that ties into the evaluation process. And then we're going to talk a little bit about advisors and what our role is in the securing or locating advisors for the evaluation process. And I might point to some things that have already been talked about briefly, but I'm not going to read it to you because it is pretty much all in the operations manual. Everything that we do, or everything that regulates us, it's all covered in that operations manual.
So, Katie, before
Yeah.
you begin, can I just
Yes.
add one thing? This was very confusing to me last year when I came on. What in the heck are they talking about advisors and what are commissioners? And I was kind of surprised by how everybody would use their name as commissioner or whatever. But I understand it now that I've been through the process a little bit more. So as a commissioner, you are the person who has the right to ultimately vote on what is moved forward and the responsibility for that. The advisors are other people that we bring into the evaluation this summer that look at these carefully and give us advice on what they think from their perspective. Typically, teachers in those areas, and then they give us feedback. But your job as a commissioner is to read that feedback and be sure that that process is protected and thorough, and ultimately that you know everything that you need to know. But those people will coach and advise you about what they've seen and what they've done. Does that make a little bit of sense to new people? So it'll be that's kind of the distinction between the two.
So as the number one question that you'll have people ask you, so you might as well look, it's a very long definition, but the first thing you'll get is textbooks. We don't have money for textbooks. And they're a connotation of what a textbook is. So the definition of a textbook is in several different places defined, and it is pretty comprehensive. It is not the traditional bound book. It is digital. It is anything a publisher packages together in any format to meet the criteria sheet, and it's all the publisher's decision. We give them the criteria sheet, and then they decide what all they want to offer us to meet the criteria so that they can be adopted for this package of whatever it might contain. It can be a blended, so it could be totally a digital platform. It could be totally old school text bound. And so it varies. It is not traditional bound book that when we were younger we would have thought we would have had. So that's the two things you're going to hear as a commissioner is why we don't have textbooks. When we do have some money, and it is used at the LEA level. And two, we know what a textbook encompasses. Will be two things that you will get a lot of questions about when people find out that you're a commissioner. So I will point that out. So let's start. It kind of intermingles, and it sounds intimidating, but like Dr. Moody says, it's really not. And as you experience it, it'll kind of flow and fall together. But as she said, in the statute, as a commission, our ultimate responsibility is to have a written report and then oral communication of the materials that are submitted. Part of our role is we are all, as a commission, appointed for different strengths, and we may have people on the commission that are this year's ELA that are classroom teachers that teach reading or English language arts, but we also have commission members that are math, that's their specialty, and we have them that are CTE, home ec, that's their specialty. And so we hire or we find specialties in the classroom to also give us more feedback, and that's also in the statute where it allows for us to seek people that are experts in their field, and there's some certain guidelines for those experts. So our first and foremost part of the evaluation is that we will in the end make a formal report, and as commissioners we also get, personally, you will get everything that the publishers submit. So that's going to be maybe a little overwhelming to some people because we have no idea what that looks like until they say, here's what we submit, we want. It can be, ELA tends to be a lot, especially elementary ELA, could be a lot of materials. And so they send it to you to a place that you designate. And we'll talk about that later. And as soon as you get that, you can start looking at it and messing with it and trying to figure out, what you have and what it looks like and all that. You don't have to wait until the evaluation week. So you have all the materials, they come to you. The best way to talk about the process is to look at the timeline. And so if you look there's two places the timeline is. It's in the draft, invitation draft, which we have in our folder. And it's on page, when I open mine up, it doesn't line up right. I think it's on page 4 is where it starts. 5.
You were close.
Thank you. It's like it cut off when I opened it as a Word document. And so that is the evaluation process. There are things on this on the schedule that is like an FYI, so that you know what's going on at the DPI level, and there are things that we need to be at, or that are part of the meetings that we're required to attend 75% of. The day would be the first one. So the first date would be what we call our first planning meeting, which is the 21st, and that's our initial training. And then some things happen between now and the time we meet next. That's just there for your general information in March. And our next meeting together as a group would be March the 28th. And so for us, that's part of our evaluation work. And that's our content meeting. And so at that meeting, we will have department representatives from ELA, from the EC department, division, and from ESL. And then we also have some discussion about the criteria sheet and in more detail what the evaluation tool or platform looks like. So we'll talk more about that at that meeting. And then some things happen, all the legal kind of stuff with bids and all that. DPI handles all of that. So then we come back on the 17th of April, and that's our second planning session, and that's when we're really we're digging down and making the plans for evaluation week. By that point, we would have advisors identified or a pool of advisors, and so that will happen in April. Then you'll see it's not a meeting, but that June 3rd to the 7th that week, that is the window that you will get the materials. And so you're not physically at a meeting, but you might want to be aware that that's when they start coming in. And on the 7th, they are all to be everything submitted you should have at the location that you've identified. And at that point, like I said before, you might want to check and make sure that you did get it all. If they don't send something, it could be removed from the list, but that's part of the publisher's responsibility. And so just know that at that window, that's when you should have everything delivered. And we'll talk about the site and all that later. And then on the week of the evaluation, which is going to be at the Embassy Suites in Greensboro, it's near the airport, on July 8th, that's the day that the publishers come in and set up, and so that's when our work, for lack of a better word, starts, because we need to be on site, or enough of us need to be on site, because we're responsible for checking off that they've left everything that they're required to leave. And if something's missing and trying to fit the holes, troubleshooting, making sure the presentation's up and ready for the evaluation. And that's the first day, and that would be July 8th. And then the days that would follow that up until the 13th would be that evaluation week. So we start with training of the advisors, which are the ones that we hire, for lack of a better word, to evaluate materials for us. And then they spend days digging in and working, and we're facilitating that. We're in the rooms, and if they have any problems, helping them navigate or find materials, and organizing that work of it. And so we're there that week. There may be somebody that goes and comes back for some things. Some people are 12 months. I know we have principals and we have superintendents, and things go on in the summertime that require you to pop out and come back in. And that's okay during that work part when they're actually working. The end of the week is when the advisors debrief to us. So they come in as a group, and they tell us their impressions. And they share their ahas and their pros and their cons. And we diligently take notes. And so that is at the end of that week. The advisors submit a report, and then they're off on their merry way. Their work is done. Then it boils down to the nitty-gritty for the commissioners. After that, after the advisors week, we have from July the 13th until August the 1st to finalize our reports. And again, that's all on a digital platform that we'll get trained at the next meeting. And so don't worry about that. It is really easier than it sounds, I will say. And so we have roughly 3 weeks to finalize our reports. Then we come back together as a commission on the 1st, and we start our deliberation. And so as a deliberation is like a conversation. You already kind of know how you feel based on your things that you have discovered as you looked into the materials and what you've heard the experts that we've hired. You've heard their advice and what they think about the materials. And we talk about it by bid number. Everything's got a bid number. And so you'll talk about pros and cons, and then we vote. Yes, we would recommend it. It meets all the criteria. No, we don't recommend it, with specific comments, and we'll get into what all that looks like at the April meeting. The second day is generally for reconsiderations, like Dr. Fair already said. If we say no as the board, if the overall vote is against recommendation, the publisher has the opportunity to come back to us for what we call reconsideration, which they bring whatever they feel would make their case, and they try to convince us that they do meet the criteria. And then again, we vote again, yes or no. And then at the point that we leave the meeting on the 2nd, if we go into the 2nd, I will say if we don't have any reconsiderations, we would be finished when the deliberation was over. Before we leave the building, our reports are due, and it's all digital, so it's just a matter of you just electronically sign and submit, and you're done. And that's the end of your work as the commissioner until we start the next round. So that's kind of like the evaluation outline for you as the commission. Like I said, a lot of things happen at the DPI level. Dr. Fair's always behind the scenes with the textbook warehouse, getting things lined up and doing all the legal stuff. And then we come on the tentatively the 4th of September, then Dr. Moody would make a presentation to the State Board of Education along with Dr. Fair or someone else in the department, presenting our results to the State Board of Education, who will already have the written report that we do. Basically, our written report gets dumped into a huge document, and the board gets that ahead of time, and they have a chance to review it. And then the board decides at that meeting whether yes or no they accept the list as recommended. There is a final, a publisher can make a final appeal at that point, but if that happens, it is extremely rare. If we have good documentation and sound reasons behind it, it usually doesn't go that far. So that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of like what the timeline's like in regards to the roles of the commissioners. Anybody have any questions about that quick kind of spiel? I would say everything is in the operation manual, and then you also might want to familiarize yourself with the invitation, which is in draft form now, and all the criteria sheets that we use to evaluate are also in the invitation. There's also a lot of legalese about contracts and that sort of stuff that's in the draft invitation as well. The invitation is what gets put out to the publishers that they look at before they decide what they're going to bid. So before we go on to talk about advisors, this may be a good time to take a break. I think we've been sitting for about an hour 50. Anybody need to take a break, or do you want to go? We're pretty good on schedule, so sure. Let's take a 10-minute break so everybody can Come back at 11:11.